Hi there, everyone.
Hi.
Let's start here. My name is Ayn Nasir, and I'll be presenting a lecture called Making Mistakes, Rational Responses to Errors of Knowledge and Evasion. But first, let me tell you a little bit about myself. After becoming interested in philosophy and politics at a young age, I discovered Ayn Rand when I was 16. I've been active in promoting objectivism for about 15 years. I'm running a successful study group called Great Lakes Objectivists in Michigan with my husband Robert, who will be constantly taking pictures here. All right. And I also work as a designer right now for The Undercurrent, which you may have heard of. It's a student, sort of a national student newspaper, objectivist student newspaper. And so in the last week of September, we are launching a live stream lecture series for our Capitalism Awareness Week project. If you haven't taken a flyer outside, they're handing them around right now. So speakers will include Garen Brooke, Don Watkins, Eric Daniels, and John Allison, who's awesome, if you didn't know that already. And we're looking for people to help promote and help finance this project as well. If you're interested, you can certainly contact them. And I'd also like to remind you that the orders for the fall edition of The Undercurrent are closing this Tuesday, so please go to theundercurrent.info and place your orders. All right, and one last PSA here. Please consider contributing more funds to David Maltby, who has been doing a bang-up job with this whole conference, and I'd like to see him turn a really big profit, and I'm sure you guys will too. So, as everyone said, give till it hurts. All right, so, let's keep going. Let's get there. So I've been particularly interested in learning how to communicate objectivist ideas to people in general, and trying to find the points where Ayn Rand's ideas and the ideas familiar to our culture meet. Much of my material is derived from various non-objectivist sources, self-improvement, psychology texts, and my own ideas, as well as from Ayn Rand. I'd like to especially point out the value I received from reading and referencing Dr. Ellen Kenner and Dr. Ed Locke's book, The Selfish Path to Romance, which is not only about romance, but covers the basics of cognitive therapy integrated with objectivist principles. I highly recommend that everyone, regardless of your relationship status, read it and study it. It's a great book. With that, let's start with what Ayn Rand has said about a mistake she once made. My greatest personal mistake is ever to follow a word or moment that doesn't count. That I do not refer to my own basic principles. Every word, action, every moment counts. This is the pattern on which everybody makes mistakes or becomes irrational, not relating their one action or one conviction to another. This gives us a clue as to how to look at our own mistakes in a rational, positive way. But we'll discuss this in detail a little later. A mistake is defined as an error or default resulting from defective judgment, deficient knowledge or carelessness, a conception or misunderstanding. Mistakes come in many forms and out of many contexts, resulting in a wide range of consequences. Everybody has made them. You've made them, I've made them, resulting in thousands of mistakes in a lifetime. From locking your keys in the car, to realizing you forgot your tickets to the concert when you arrived, to accidentally destroying a friend's property, to forgetting a deadline at work, to acting on poor moral judgment and telling convenient lies, to becoming defensive when someone identifies your mistake. Regardless of any moral breaches involved, the very first thing you must do is admit the mistake, clear and consciously to yourself. Understand that it is now a fact of reality, and because you are the cause of it, you must now take responsibility, regardless of how much it will cost you emotionally. it might hurt. At this stage, it's best not to be afraid of looking at it or be embarrassed, and especially not be paralyzed with guilt. But take a few deep breaths. As Mary Pickford once said, the actress, if you have made mistakes, even serious ones, there's always another chance for you. What we call a failure is not the falling down, but the staying down. What makes a mistake helpful to us or not is whether it's first admitted and then examined for its positive lesson it might contain. The only time you can commit a true failure is when you refuse to admit your mistake and take responsibility for it. The staying down, the idea that mistakes are shameful acts, better left forgotten, that it's too embarrassing or painful to face them, can be found everywhere in our society. Not only is this viewpoint a self-expectation for many people, but it's tolerated at work in the form of covering your ass, in families, in school, and even sometimes within the objectivist community. I don't know, that may be a mistake there. I don't know if that's So if you are a morally conscientious person, you will tend to feel guilt, but you might choose to wallow in it. And you might also choose to do what is easy instead of what is right. By the way, that's a Dumbledore line, if anybody knows about Harry Potter. And blank out. Move on to something else, anything else, get it out of your mind, avoid the pain. And you can even go so far as deflecting another person's noticing it. Become defensive and make more mistakes on top of the first one. But before we go any further with our mistakes, let's make some distinctions. There are mistakes based on having the wrong information, on simply forgetting to do something, on being clumsy. These mistakes are made due to honest errors or errors of knowledge. As Galt once said here, an error of knowledge is not a moral flaw, provided you are willing to correct it. That which you do not know, or as I added, or that which you cannot help, as in a physical accident, is not a moral charge against you. Make every moral allowance for errors of knowledge. And Ayn Rand said in The Cult of Moral Grayness, if in a complex moral issue a man struggles to determine what is right and fails or makes an honest error, he cannot be regarded as gray. Morally, he is white. Errors of knowledge are not breaches of morality, and no proper moral code can demand infallibility or omniscience. Now, to be clear, honest errors are not to be shrugged off when you make them because they're honest errors. Oh, it's just an honest error. You must still admit them, you must take responsibility and learn from them. Even if what you did was a silly mistake, a physical accident, or an action that you did not intend to take, this does not absolve you from taking responsibility. For instance, for acknowledging anyone who has been inadvertently hurt or inconvenienced by your action. You must be prepared to apologize and make amends in case of accidents. If you do try to shrug it off, you are potentially breaching morality and possibly committing an injustice. So try your best not to do this. This is called evasion. And evaded is to be evaded at all times. So another quote here from Mr. Galt. A breach of morality is the conscious choice of an action you know to be evil, or a willful evasion of knowledge, a suspension of sight and thought. And in The Cult of Moral Grayness, if in order to escape the responsibility of moral judgment, a man closes his eyes and mind, if he evades the facts of the issue and struggles not to know, he cannot be regarded as gray. Morally, he is as black as they come. And now, turning towards the difference between these two. Another excellent quote from the Journals of Ayn Rand. In the first case of errors of knowledge, a man remains open to new knowledge, open to the possibility of correcting his error. In the second case of evasion, the man has closed the door to knowledge, therefore closed it to correction, and therefore his error and his evil will grow worse and worse. And here's an excellent quote on the kind of ironic logic of evasion I found interesting. The joke of it is that his only essential evil is the irrationalist attitude, and that no crime which he has committed in the past and which he is afraid to consciously acknowledge is as evil as his persisting, his persisting in irrationalism. It's irrationalism that made his original guilt possible. The guilt and the crime were the consequence of it, but the irrationalism or evasion was the root and the cause, the only basic evil. I just found that very, very interesting, because when it really comes down to it, your willingness to reject reason, to reject looking at reality, is your main mistake. Anything else can be corrected. Of course, barring any extreme circumstances, like being, Adolf Hitler or something, or even Gail Wynand. He couldn't do it. He could not redeem himself. So, giving up on reason, giving up on your mind, that is what initially propels a person to act immorally. But it is what also keeps a person from redeeming himself if he persists in evading. Fortunately, there is a way you can mentally protect yourself from evasion. Great. But first you must fully understand it. One of the most troublesome obstacles to admitting and learning from mistakes is defensiveness. Who knows who said this? Awesome. According to Drs. Kenner and Locke, defense mechanisms are comprised of repression, not allowing yourself to become consciously aware of your emotions, blocking out all guilt or fear after making a mistake, denial, refusing to acknowledge painful realities, the consequences of your mistakes, and evasion, deliberately refusing to think or mentally focus when it is needed, pretending it never happened.